Hello, Bill. In this segment, we're going to look at how people access the NDIS scheme.
Sure.
The NDIS scheme is intended to provide essential long-term reliable care and support for people who are severely and profoundly disabled. In practice, how do people access this scheme?
As you can imagine, as with most schemes, there's an application process that people need to go through. The agency has assisted that by providing online an access checker tool that people can use to get a feel for their entitlements. It's a method of filling in the details to see whether people would be entitled to participate in the scheme.
Okay. Dealing first with age, what is required?
Eventually, the age criteria will be based purely on the person having acquired their disability under the age of 65 years. That's the case now in some of the launch areas, New South Wales for example. In the short term, whilst the scheme is in its launch phase, the age limits are a little different in Tasmania and South Australia, where the scheme is limited to young people or children respectively.
Thank you. The second criteria relates to a person's residency status and where they live. What does this mean?
Eventually, residency will just mean residency in Australia, and that could be an Australian citizen, permanent resident, or someone with a particular visa type. In the short term, whilst the scheme is still using launch areas, then residency can have a different meaning, I suppose, in the sense that the person needs to reside in one of the launch areas, be it Hunter Valley, Victoria, certain areas of Victoria, or some other parts of Australia.
Thank you. Can someone move into a launch site to access the benefits of the NDIS?
It's possible for someone to move into a launch area. The legislation discourages that in the short term. It's possible, however, to move in if the person moves for some other reason, employment, family support, those sorts of reasons.
Thank you. How do the residence rules work for children?
The residence rules for children can work the same way as they do for an adult if the child is living essentially on their own. If they're with their parents, then the parents' residence is relevant. If the parents have separated, then one of the parents needs to reside in Australia in the long term or in the short term in the relevant launch area.
What happens if a person is receiving care and support from NDIS and decides to travel overseas for a period of time?
The scheme recognises that it's possible for people to wish to travel overseas for a period of time, and there's a specific reference to what's called a period of grace, which is usually 6 weeks. So someone might wish to travel overseas on a holiday, for example. They would still be a member of the scheme. In certain circumstances, the CEO of the agency could provide a longer period of absence. The problem, as you can imagine, if there is an extended period of absence from Australia, is the difficulty the agency might have in providing support and assistance to that person if they're in another country for months at a time.
Okay, all right. The third criteria is disability. Is there a list of conditions or disabilities that NDIS covers? And how does this work in practice?
The scheme doesn't provide a list as such. There is within the scheme a focus on broad criteria such as whether the disability is permanent and whether the disability results in some reduced capacity to participate in, for example, work or general society as a whole. Having said that, the agency has provided some lists of some conditions which will, if you like, automatically meet the criteria. So certain disabilities or certain forms of disability have been recognised and listed on the agency's website.
Thank you. The importance of early intervention has also been recognised by the NDIS. What does this mean?
Early intervention focuses on children under the age of 6 years with developmental delay. The idea obviously is that for those children it's difficult to say whether their disability will be permanent within the meaning of the scheme. And so it's possible for the agency to provide early intervention for those children up until that age. In an ideal world, I suppose that early intervention may mean that they don't develop a permanent disability and therefore they don't need to participate in the scheme beyond a young age.
Bill, can a person who receives the NDIS for care and support find themselves in the future not receiving that support, or is that support coming to an end?
The scheme doesn't provide a permanent entitlement. There is obviously scope for reassessment over time, and that may result in an increase in the level of support or a decrease. If a person's condition improves, perhaps through some medical intervention, they may no longer be entitled to supports under the scheme at all. The person may move out of Australia, or in the short term, of course, they may move out of a launch area such that they're no longer in that part of Australia providing the scheme.
Bill, thank you very much for helping us understand how to access the NDIS scheme.
Thank you.